That's the guy. Ողջույն հարգելի հարազատներ, գրգին անգամ մեծ ուրախությամբ կհայտնեմ, կհայտարարեմ, որ մենք դարձյալ միասին ենք։ Միասին ենք միշտ, բայց միասին ենք այստեղ ընդամենը եթերի միջոցով։ Հորիզոն հայկական հեռուստաերանի ցերբաստարին ես Մանուկ Սերեդարյանն եմ եւ մնալով միասին այսօր խոսենք թեմայի շուրջ, որ կհետաքրքրի ամբողջ մարդկությանը։ Եվ բնականաբար նաև մեզ, որովհետև այդ մարդկության մեջ ամենաշատ դժողները մեկը որպես ազգ, որպես ժողովուրդ, որպես երկիր։ Սակայն այդ ցավի բերումով երևի մենք այսօր նաև կարողություն ունենք մտածելու եւ մեր եւ միաժամանակ այլոց մասին։ Այսօրվան մեր հարցազրույցը ունի այդպիսի բնույթ, իսկ մեր զրուցակիցը համաշխարհային ճանաչման արժանացած անձնավորություն է։ Ես այդ մեկը վիճ կեմանագնալ եւ մենք ընդամենը ռոբեների հետ այս ներածականին հետո կվերաթարնանք, կսկսենք մեր այսօրվան երթը ցեզի հետ միասին։ Ով է մեր հյուրը, ինչի մասին կխոսենք, մեր բաժինը ինչ է եւ ուր է։ Ընդամենը ռոբեներ, բարև ձեզ։ That was it. Միասին մեզ երդի այսօր, ձեզի երդի այսօր հարկելի հայրենագիցներ, քիչ առաջ կսեի, համաշխարհային թեմ եւ ձեզ մի շատերը ծանոթ են այդ անձնավորության։ Հարկանքով կխնդրեմ, որ միանաք ինձ եւ հարկանքով ողջունեմ մեր այսօրվան զրուցակիցը, Dr. Tom Catena. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Manug.
It is my pleasure, honor, privilege to have someone like you, and you specifically in this case, here tonight, because what you have been doing and you are still doing, and I guess you will be doing, you'll continue doing for humanity, is priceless. Would you please tell us how the entire big idea of Aurora, of your initiative in Africa, in Sudan, helping people who are helpless, having that courage, having that bravery, would you please tell us the story, please?
Well, you know, I've been now in Sudan for 11 and a half years, almost 20 years in Africa, and I'm there as a Catholic lay missionary. So I'm a Roman Catholic, and I'm there as a missionary doctor. I'm not a priest or a brother. And the way I see it, we're called by our faith to go and serve the least of these brothers and sisters. And I take that command very seriously, and that's what I'm there doing. So I see my task as being something very simple. I don't have big ideas and big thoughts. I see the command of Christ to take care of each other. I take Christ at his word, and I try to go ahead and do that work.
And you have been doing it for a while now.
Yes.
Actually, a long while now. And I understand that's your humility, which I appreciate, we all appreciate. However, you know, you could have been helping the ones in need in an area where it's relatively more peaceful, in an area where it's easy to serve, in an area where you can reach people and you can reach out to them in no danger, in no risk. But you have been in one of the riskiest areas in Africa, Sudan.
Right.
Would you please tell us a little bit in that regard too?
Yeah, you know, I think I don't think everybody has to, of course, serve in that kind of environment. I think we're all called to different jobs in different parts of the world. When I first arrived in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan, this was March 2008. This was a period of relative peace. There was 5 years of peace in a span of about 35 years. This was one of the rare times of peace in Sudan. So when I got there was no war. We got the hospital set up, started working, started getting really, really busy. And then June 2011, the war broke out. And the few NGOs that were there all left. We had several expatriates, 8 or 9 expatriates from Kenya and from Uganda. They left. And I got together with the sisters and the priests. We said, no, let's stay. And I think we were all of one mind. And our thinking was, look, we're here as missionaries. And as missionaries, when there are problems and when trouble breaks out, it's our time to shine. It's our time to show our faith that, hey, look, if we cut and run when trouble comes, then we're not really showing much of a witness of our faith. So we said, this is the time we got to stick it out and stay and take care of the people. And I think that unity we felt to stay there and do this kind of strengthened all of us and gave us the resolve to stick it out and stay there up till now.
Every now and then we see, well, I would say before that, I would say quite frequently we see lots of troubling things, news, situations around the world. Mm-hmm. But every now and then we see something that rebuilds the hope about humanity, rebuilds the hope about human kindness. Mm-hmm. And this is an example, a bright, shining star example. Now, Եվ հարկելի հարազատներ այստեղ կենթադրեմ արդեն բոլորը դեսած եք զանազան միջոցներով կամ արիտներով Dr. Paul Catena-ն եւ Tom Catena-ն ներողություն եւ իր գործունեությունը եւ բնականաբար կենթադրեմ որ ցեզ մեջ շատեր նայեք գիտեն որ նա Aurora մրցանակի հումանիտարիան մրցանակի թափնեգիրն է. And I think you understood what I said, didn't you?
Yeah.
And so now let's jump right to Aurora. How did that start? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What does that actually, more than what does that mean, what does that kind of reiterate? What is the imperative behind? What does that tell you to do? Mm-hmm. What kind of responsibilities, duties, tasks that Aurora adds to Tom Catena, to the organization, and to humanity at large?
Right. So I'm not sure how much you know or the audience knows about the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative. So it's made up of the Aurora Prize, which has been around since 2016. And it's the main idea was started by 3 Armenians to give gratitude to the people that saved their ancestors during the Armenian genocide. Mm-hmm. So this was their way of giving back, to say thank you to those people that are long dead for saving their ancestors. And the motto was gratitude in action. So it's like, okay, we're very thankful. Gratitude in action. So it's like, okay, thanks for saving my grandfather. Since you saved my grandfather, he was the one person in his family survived. Now I'm here, I'm able to live my life in the U.S. like Bartan Gregorian, in Lebanon and Canada like Nubar Afayan, in Moscow and Armenia like Ruben Vardanian. So instead of just saying thank you, they said, well, let's say thank you by doing something. So they established the Aurora Prize. And the idea was, let's highlight the work of what they call modern day heroes. People that are doing things to save other people, like their grandparents who were saved by somebody.
Yes.
And the whole idea is let's do this as a counterweight to all the modern day negativity, pessimism, hatred. There's so much negative. You turn on the news and you get depressed. You have to take antidepressants from watching the news. Let's do something positive. And I think they've been pretty successful. They say, look, let's highlight these people. Let's show the world there are people out there. I'm one example of many that are doing great things without any recognition. Nobody knows about them. And let's highlight their work, not to just highlight one person, but to show the rest of the world that people are doing this work, that they're kind of average Joes, that you can also do something. And there are some good points, there are some good things in the world that we need to highlight. So this has been one of the main messages that I see about Aurora. It's about hope. It's about a second chance. The whole idea behind Mount Ararat, second chance. These are people who are doing work to give other people a second chance at life.
And to remind the world that there's always a way to help. There's always a way to extend a hand to the needy. Mm-hmm. There's always a way to give those people that second chance that you mentioned. Because sometimes, yes, news, things that we see around us, in this case, the entire world has become a tiny village, actually. Mm-hmm. So something happens on the other side of the world, we can hear about it, we can see, we can know the details within only a few seconds. So when we maybe overshadow the hope, maybe they overcome the will to do something. Maybe they just take away the ability of a person to start that initiative, saying that there's no point because this is what's going on.
Right.
Now, against that, we have these examples, in this case, this example, Aurora's example, that is shining and glowing and reminding us and everyone in the world, not only Armenians, but everyone in the world, that there is always a way to extend the hand, to hold the hand and bring them out of that misery they are in. And that misery that they are in is not their fault, is it?
Right, absolutely not. Right. They're victims of circumstance. I mean, the people that we take care of every day are victims of circumstance. Totally innocent people that have been subjugated by the government of Khartoum for centuries, not only 20 years, and they've got nothing to do with it. And the idea is, as I was saying before, as a counterweight to this negativity. If you look at, I think what happens is people look at the world and their head gets swollen like this. They say these problems are too big. All they hear about is, the hatred, wars, climate change, and massacres,
Yeah.
and in the U.S. these mass shootings. Well, what can I do to help any of these problems? And I think one thing that Aurora does, and what I would really encourage people is don't bring your head out here. They call psychiatrists shrinks. And the idea is they shrink the person's head. So shrink your head down. Bring it down to a personal level, one-on-one. Start with that. So start with something small. If it's, find your favorite charity or favorite cause, something you believe in. Give a couple bucks a month. Start with that and start learning about the work that these people do. Whether it's a religious organization, not religious. I'm not here to stand up for any one group. Find something you're passionate about, something you like to support, and start small with that. Get your head small. Don't worry about the big picture, Start small and then expand your world out from there and see where you can reach. There's always something you can do.
Definitely, and that brings us to that simple yet powerful, effective point that one way to solve those big problems is breaking down that problem into smaller parts and smaller pieces. And all the problems of the entire world most probably will not succeed, but if you tackle one of them only, or breaking it down into a smaller part to which you take responsibility to help, to contribute, to do your part, and the second person, the third person, the 10th person, the millionth person, now we may see solutions that are making a difference.
Right. If you listen to all the negativity, you sort of fall into a despair where you just kind of give up. If you start small, as we talked about, I think before you know it, you'll find other like-minded people that had the same idea. So all these like-minded people are out there. With time, you find ways to connect, and now you've got a bit of a movement that's going forward, trying to solve these issues. Okay, then once you start a movement, you get going in the right direction. So I think this is one of the ideas behind this Ararat challenge, which we haven't talked about.
We will.
Okay, great. I won't steer us under that. I'll let
Yeah, we
you
will.
get into that. But I think the idea is I think people's heads get too big. Shrink your head down, start small, and you'll find other like-minded people to join your cause and move forward together.
So can we actually use this example of the 2 cents of the widow?
2 cents of the widow.
Of the widow, right?
Yeah.
So if I have only 2 cents
Right.
and I can contribute with those 2 cents, someone else might have 200 cents.
Right.
And someone else might have 1,000 cents. And all of a sudden, maybe it will turn into an ocean
Right.
before we know it.
Right.
So actually, we are seeing that example. We are seeing, yes, there are many humanitarian organizations around the world, and they are just re-establishing hope, providing hope again, providing that second chance to the people who really need that second chance. And actually, all they need is that second chance to survive, to revive, and to move forward, and to contribute to humanity. Humanity, after all, is not all these, conflict areas, those politicians, those people who have their interests and they don't care about anything else. And we all have noticed, I believe, and you might be seeing that, you might have lived that first-hand account. Most of the time, the victims are the people who have nothing to do with the conflict.
Right.
Who have nothing to do with the interest of those politicians or those, whatever we want to name them now, the people, the authors, the people around or behind that scene, behind that conflict. Would you elaborate a little bit about that point? All those innocent children and women and even men who had been working just all the day just to bring the food on the table for their kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody all over the world 99.999% of people are just trying to survive. If you just left them alone, didn't have malevolent influences pushing them in the wrong directions, they just want to survive. They want to work, they want a decent job, they want to provide for the families, they want to go ahead with life. They don't want to be involved in conflict. And I think it's people that have ulterior motives that manipulate things, and that these simple people are the ones that end up suffering. For us in Sudan, everybody there is a peasant farmer, just a subsistence farmer, and yet they've been harassed for years by this tyrannical government. They've got nothing to do with this stuff. It's not their problem. They just want to survive. And if they're left to their own devices, they'll do perfectly fine. But after so many years of conflict, they don't have their farming land's been encroached upon. They don't have enough land to farm. Kids don't have a chance for school. Healthcare is in shambles. So they're living a very sort of hand-to-mouth existence because of that.
I believe people there and people like them, many other places, just what they're looking for is this, give us this day our daily bread.
Absolutely.
And what you just mentioned is quite scary and dangerous. When a kid doesn't have a school opportunity, what do you expect for that kid to become if they're not at school, if they are not in the right path to get educated, to become the future, the tomorrow's man, the tomorrow's father, the tomorrow's, businessman, farmer? Of course, what do you expect? Now, some people just hunt at that point and hunt at that opportunity and turn those children, those kids into killers.
Right.
Have you seen that?
We have. They're very, people that are not educated don't get another worldview and have the ability to, what I found, in Uba is and it's not different anywhere else, what education gives you, what I realize, this is the first place I've worked where the vast majority of people had no education or very limited. And I think what education gives you is the ability to reason. You can evaluate
Absolutely.
Pros and cons of
Absolutely.
things. I remember I went there and I was like, people would get a fixed view of something and you couldn't talk them out of it. You couldn't reason with them. They were not interested. So this kind of, with this kind of mentality, it's very easy to manipulate people. You can turn them, and once you get them brainwashed and going your direction, there's no way you can get around that. You can't reverse that way of thinking. So it's very dangerous to have a population where the people are not educated. They can't reason and think through a problem for themselves and evaluate. Well, this guy's promising us stuff, but I think he's not telling the truth. I think it's the wrong thing. So a lack of education is a very dangerous thing.
And I also at least assume that was done in purpose as well. Not giving education to those kids so that a few years from now we'll turn them into our followers, we'll turn them into our fighters, the killers who are there. And I have seen, you have seen, many of us have seen all these 12, 13, 14, even 10 years old kids in different areas of Africa and anywhere else and manywhere else in the world who have, instead of having the pen or the pencil and the book and the notebook in their hand, they have all these weapons in their hand, and they don't know what they are doing.
Right. Yeah. It behooves a government, especially a dictatorial government, to keep the people ignorant. And that way you can manipulate them very easily. You can take these kids and say, nope, they're ours. We need these children to fight our cause, and you can easily twist people's minds. And I think child soldiers is one of the biggest tragedies we have. It's a terrible problem in Sudan and South Sudan. Terrible problem.
That child who is 14, 16, 12, 13, at least theoretically, they still have 60, 70 years of life ahead. And I don't think they will be in that same business for the rest of their lives unless they decide to be mercenaries, which is not totally excluded. So after that conflict, let's say, somehow settles down or it's in truce for a while, what else they are going to do? They have no education, they have no trade. The only thing that they have done and seen and learned, if that learned word is correct word there, is killing.
Right.
So they will turn to civilians and they will become now civilian killers, criminals in other words.
Absolutely.
And it looks like, or it actually is, I guess, a state policy.
Yeah. This has been the issue in Sudan and South Sudan, when you have someone who's not educated and all they know is violence and they have a gun and they have no other way to make a living. What they do is they use that gun to their advantage. So
of course.
it becomes thuggery, holding people up, robbing people, robbing convoys. This becomes their livelihood, and that's all they know. And it's a terrible way to live. It leads to a very unstable society.
Exactly, that's the only thing that they know, and that's the only thing that they can do. So they will do it because they don't have any other means to earn that bite, that daily bread. And that brings us to another tragedy. I don't know if it is the time to talk about it, is these the child warriors or children in wars, and terrorist children, killer children. I don't know what are the titles there. I don't want to label children with these things, because actually it isn't, and anyway, it won't be their fault, but they are also victims. Do you agree with that idea?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What could be done? I understand that education would be maybe the most powerful and the most efficient and effective weapon to prevent these kind of things in the future. However, there are certain locations, areas, regions where there are established policies to, just as if, in the history, the Ottoman Empire, 200, 300, 400 years ago, when they started their campaigns and then they established the Ottoman Empire, they used to do the same thing, actually, the Yeniçeris. They used to kids, 5, 6 years old, and they would just put them in camp, so they turn into kind of beasts, if my expression is correct here, so that the only thing that they would know later on is just to fight and kill people without even knowing what are they doing, why are they doing, what is the purpose of that battle or that war or that killing other people.
Yeah, no ability to reason without education.
It's back to education, right? Okay, so it's a tragedy that unfortunately, we're living in the world here in the 21st century, where we think ourselves quite civilized, yet it looks like we still have a lot to do. And actually, within that a lot to do, here the Aurora shines and sheds a light around the world just by reestablishing, as we said, reestablishing the hope for the people in need, giving them a little chance, that second chance, hoping to bring them back to life. Now, I believe during your mission and your service in the area, you also served a huge number of civilians who might have been directly victimized by wars or conflicts in their own area, but they were underserved communities. They didn't have the healthcare system, they didn't have the sanitary systems, they didn't have even the necessary and the enough nutritional amounts, if I'm correct. Would you please talk about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, Innu Mountains is it's a very basic life there. Like I was saying before, everybody is a subsistence farmer, so they're just kind of on the edge. So any disruption in their life really causes a huge crisis for the family. And during these years of civil war, one of the policies of the Khartoum government was a scorched earth policy. So they would come in with bombers, air bombers. They would come and they bomb civilian areas. And the idea was to drive the people off the land, to make the people afraid to go and farm and practice their livelihood. That way, people don't cultivate, they don't grow food, they have to leave the area. You vacate the rebel-held area. You drain the swamp, so to speak, in military terms. These are people who already are just trying to survive, and now you come and you bomb them. The suffering of the basic people there, we would be sitting in the hospital, there'd be a truckload of wounded civilians coming, just mangled and torn to pieces.
And I believe you literally mean a truckload.
Yeah, a truckload, because their bombing would happen in a village somewhere, it'd be bodies everywhere. They would try to get a military truck or something to come pick them up, and they would just load them on the truck. We don't have ambulances or any kind of normal transport. So any truck that was around, they would commandeer that truck, put the bodies on the truck and the wounded, and then bring them up to the hospital. They just drive up, and people just moaning and groaning.
Like crop.
Yeah, it was terrible. So we'd bring them in the hospital and do the best we could with them.
What are the conditions under which you were working? How would the government, or how would you survive, actually, in that kind of a condition? Because I don't believe they were okay, they were comfortable with the mission that you were the services and the mission that you were providing the local civilians.
Right, so they knew we were there. This is the government of Khartoum. We live in a rebel-held territory, so we had, the Esplanade North rebels had an area carved out in the Innu Mountains. and the government they were there, and they were not happy we were there. So on two separate occasions, they bombed the hospital directly with, thank God, minimal damage. And they bombed our local area just around kind of the periphery of the hospital on several occasions. There was a primary school right next to us. They bombed just next to the primary school. So these were, I mean, who knows? They were either attempts to drive us off by scaring us, or they really wanted to kill people there and take us out. I mean, I'll never know for sure. Hopefully someday, and I hope this happens, I'll have a chance to meet those pilots and meet those air crew and ask them, what were you guys told in the brief? Before I went to Africa, I was in the U.S. Navy. I was a flight surgeon, actually stationed just down the road in San Diego for a couple of years. And before we go out on a mission, the commander would always give a brief to the pilots. This is what we're going to do. This is the mission for today. So these pilots,
is the target.
That's the target. This is what's there. The target, which way you can destroy. What were they told in those briefings? I'm really curious what they were told. Were they told, hey, you're going to bomb a hospital? There are civilians there. Were they told you're going to bomb this? It's a hospital, but it's all soldiers there. As a matter of fact, after the hospital was bombed, one of our staff heard a radio message from the north, from El Obeid, which is a city in the north. Mm-hmm. And the way it was relayed to the population in the north of Sudan was that an American church hospital that was taking care of rebel soldiers was bombed. And I think that was just misinformation from the Khartoum government to the people there that had maybe had any qualms about bombing a hospital. It was an American hospital, which is the great Satan, the great enemy. A church hospital. Church hospitals. These are, Christians trying to infidels trying to take over from Islam, and taking care of rebel soldiers. So the rebels are trying to destabilize the country and destroy things there. So I think that's how it was played out in the press in the north. It wasn't a free press. So the people there, the people in the north, I think, had actually no idea what was happening in the Nuba Mountains, and Darfur for that matter too. I don't think they had the truth about what was happening in these places, the atrocities their government was committing.
They definitely didn't,
right?
Because in these kind of governments, in these kind of ruling parties or ruling juntas, it's the propaganda that works, not the truth, not the reality, not the free press, not the free news, not the free correspondents who would just relay the truth, the real news, that what's going on somewhere, whatever that place is. So, and back then I remember very well, and it's kind of still the same thing, hasn't changed that much. The propaganda is the one that is working and achieving their political goals, their political drives, and I don't know if those are political, but at the same time, if they are human political drives or motives. So after all, as we said in the beginning, the main victims are the people who have nothing to do with that policy, with that propaganda, with that conflict. And most of the time, I'm sure you've noticed, those conflicts are artificial conflicts.
Right.
Those are proxy wars. Did you experience that also?
Very much. I mean, what you're mentioning about the innocent people, I also look at the soldiers as being innocent. You say, well, these are the perpetrators.
Yes.
But the soldiers in the north, the Sudan army soldiers, these were Nuba. These were Darfurians, Africans.
Yes.
It's like, what the heck? I thought, you think, well, they're not the elite Arabs that were coming to kill the Nuba. So
the Nubians.
They were getting other Nuba and Darfurians. So they're not only oppressing the Nuba people, they're conscripting them to go fight their own people.
Their own people.
So it's not, Bashir's people aren't getting their hands dirty. They're sitting back and letting these guys kill each other. So it's just, it's like the poor of both sides going at it. I remember thinking about this issue and thinking, I felt kind of nauseated. I thought, this is
of course
really sad.
Of course.
Because, I was, of course, with the SPLA North rebels. And they would call them Arabs, and, we killed all these people. I just felt nauseated because I know those guys that were dead were fellow brothers of Nuba. These were not, strangers. And not that killing an Arab is something good. But it's the poor from the north. They got these guys from the slums in Khartoum to go and fight down there. Who else is going to do it? And pay them peanuts. This fighting in Yemen, what the Saudi government was doing was going to Darfur, hiring young African men, or Darfuris, kids, paying the families money and saying, well, if your son doesn't come back, if he dies there, we'll give you a little bit more. going to Saudi Arabia to do their bidding, because the Saudi Arabs aren't going to get their hands dirty fighting these Houthi rebels. They went to Darfur.
Well, they want to spend their time in the nightclubs of Paris and of course, yeah, they would bring those kids from all these underserved, poor, poverty infested areas and make them do the job for them. Right. And you have seen that on first hand. Now, the problem is sometimes the so-called civilized world, the first world, the democrat or democratic world. Now it's happening, actually. You just mentioned Yemen and Saudi Arabia and Darfur. It's still happening.
Yes.
The entire world is not even moving a finger, not even talking about it, not even doing anything that would say, okay, see, we're doing some humanitarian things. Why would it be kind of overloaded on NGOs or these kind of humanitarian missions that have the only drive that they have is to help those innocent people?
I mean, I think governments are motivated by different factors. So humanitarian workers are motivated by compassion for the people. The problem is, no matter what a government says, whether it's the U.S., whether it's China, they're not motivated by, even when they go and give aid, it's tied to something. There's always a string attached to that. You're trying to get influence. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but governments are not motivated by compassion. I don't think there's not a single one that does that. And I mean, China now is moving big time into Africa, saying, well, hey, we're different. We're not like those colonialists. We're coming to be partners with you. It's like, no, they aren't. Forget that. They're coming to colonize you.
We're not crusaders. We're not colonials.
Yeah, we're not crusaders, colonialists like these British and Americans. We're here to be partners and build up your economy. They're there to economically colonize these places. That's just how countries act.
We're not a diamond mining company. Right. We're not Shell. We're not Total. But yes, they have difficult time understanding that because they were kind of showered and brainwashed with the propaganda for so long. Right. And yes, absolutely, governments, unfortunately, they have their own way of approaching things. They have their own platforms and agendas, and usually that compassion is the one that is missing. And once you take compassion out, I would say, then we lost humanity.
Yes.
And when we lose humanity, unfortunately, you can expect anything and everything that has nothing to do with humanity, humanness, compassion, mercy, love, kindness, caring, and so on. The only thing that at this very moment pops to my mind is how strong you have been, how brave you and your co-workers in the organization have been, so that you have been able to withstand all these atrocities, all these nauseating, all these discouraging phenomena, and still being able to continue to support to humanity in that same strength that the idea started with, and the first step was taken at that point. And I can just congratulate you. And now, after Aurora, before going after Aurora, could you please also tell us a little bit about the kind of the evolution of Aurora and the maybe the changes that you have noticed over the years, positive changes over these 3 years that in the life of Aurora?
Right. So Aurora started out with the prize, and now we're 3 years into it, and so there's been quite a bit of money given out to the laureates, $3.3 million. So that's gone to support 23 different projects in 15 countries. And the projects are
I want you to repeat that again, if you don't mind, Doc. 23
projects. Different projects in 15 countries.
15 countries. So I want everyone to hear this very clearly.
So Africa, Asia, and South America. And, being a frontline, what I consider a frontline worker, all these projects are low-level grassroots organizations. And I think that's important because, nobody wants to give money or support a project or be behind something where the money goes into these big administrative costs or, funding a big building or something or, a building in Geneva. They want to see it go to the people in need. And I think what Aurora does very well is they focus on the small players where, you know, a grant of $20, $30, $40,000 can run that operation for a year. It really is a significant amount of money for a small organization. So I think Aurora is really catching steam. I think one of the main reasons I think I came on board to help with as a chair is to try to maybe guide them a bit into saying, yeah, this is, I think, is the way to go. Focus on this idea about localization, about getting money in the hands of local, small level workers on the ground. I think the impact is bigger. I think it's more efficient. I think the people that support you in the end are more satisfied because they feel that their contribution is making a difference on the ground.
As a donor, of course, I would feel the way you just described, definitely. However, would you please also give us an idea about the type of the projects that those help and donations are going to? What kind of projects, what kind of livelihood projects that they are supporting? And if there is any way to know exactly what are the outcomes, not for us, not for me, but for you as the organization, knowing that what you are doing is working, what you are doing is bearing fruit.
All right, so a lot of the projects are, quite a few are in health.
Health.
Just ones off the top of my head. There's one that was helped to build a newborn intensive care unit in Tanzania. Another one helped HIV care in, I think, Malawi. There are a lot of initiatives that have supported education in both Africa and South America. There's one project in the favelas of Rio. A lot of money went to that project there. Some money went to Maggie Barankitse's project in Rwanda. And we were there a few weeks ago with Ruben Verdenian, seeing firsthand the incredible work that was done there. In a refugee camp, they've got a big project set up in Rwanda. Refugee camp in Rwanda. One of these livelihood projects with women making all kinds of incredible, beautiful dresses and suits and shoes and everything. All this partially supported with money from Aurora. These are the kind of projects that Aurora supports. These are grassroots organizations doing this work. The accountability is very important, and they are required to give a report about what they're doing. Now, the flip side of that is one of the barriers to these small organizations, and I can attest to this as being a frontline worker. Some of these big organizations, when they give you $1,000, you got to spend $500 to hire staff to write the reports. It's very inefficient. You can't do it. So I think the approach of Aurora is one of trust. So by the time you become an Aurora laureate or an Aurora semi-finalist, you've gone through a pretty long vetting process. So for instance, last year there were 700 some people nominated. That 700 goes through a pretty serious vetting process down to 20 semi-finalists. So you go from 700 down to 20. Those 20 have been pretty heavily reviewed and vetted and make sure they're legitimate by first an expert panel, which are humanitarians throughout the world that kind of go through all these people and make sure they're legit. Goes to the Aurora people in Yerevan that go through everybody and they say, yeah, and they do really a lot of due diligence. A lot of time is spent on the issue of due diligence to make sure these 20 semi-finalists are legitimate. And then from that 20,
qualified.
And qualified. And they're honest, and there's not any speck of dishonesty or negative mark in their history.
Nice.
Those 20 semi-finalists go down to 3 to 4, sometimes 5 finalists, and then one laureate chosen. So by the time you get to this number, you've got people that have been pretty well qualified, and at that point there's a level of trust. I mean, to be honest with you, even a big organization, they hire all these people to do administrative work. They can still cook the books and do their funny business. They cheat somebody. So in the end, you got to have some level of trust with who you're working with. So insist on some kind of reporting back, but don't make it so onerous that you've got to hire a huge staff to do that. That's kind of the Aurora model we're trying to develop and to work with.
I think in any form or any level of charity work, whether it's the type of you just described or the type of those larger organizations that have their headquarters in Geneva or in New York or in Los Angeles, at any point or at one point, after all, there is a point of trust.
Yes.
There is no way that you can control the process like 101%. There is always that maybe 1% or half percent of something that where you have to trust that someone after all. And to trust that someone, you have to show the people who are interested in this cause that this person or those people are really trustworthy people, and you just explain the process, how these people have been kind of have had proven record of being trustworthy. So at the end, there is, regardless of what kind of a charity it is, where it is, for what kind of charity purposes they are being doing, all of these, at one point there is a level, there's a point that you have to trust that organization, you have to trust that person. And after all, without trust, again, nothing would be working between any two humans. Any two humans, regardless of whatever that is, a relationship, business, emotional, and you know, any kind of romantic relationship, all of them, there is always a factor of trust which you cannot ignore, which you cannot just exclude, because after all, we are humans. Now, the idea that I want to touch base as well is, you know, sometimes people can't imagine that the idea that they have to help humanity is something that they are capable to do. And we will be going back again to the idea of, or to the point where we think, okay, have that big idea, but break it down and you will find like-minded people. Now, I guess that is the reason behind the Ararat challenge. Would you please detail that for us?
Right, so the Ararat challenge is something fairly new that our team in Armenia has come up with. And the idea really is twofold. First off, it's a, what do you call it, it's a crowdfunding campaign, which, I mean, I don't know much about this stuff, but crowdfunding is, you know, get a bunch of people together, they donate money to a
when
cause.
people found something, when they found something that they believe in and they think it is good.
Right. So I think the overarching message is, let's try to get a lot of people involved, like make this a bit of a movement. And the amount of money is of course important, but that's not the overriding factor. Give something, as little as $1 a month. Just make a commitment. Make a tiny little jump over an ant. Do something small. Say, okay, I'll give her $1 a month. And what you're doing, if you do that, you're committing to something. So commitment is one thing. Make a commitment to give some money to support these projects we talked about. But also, you're forming a sense of solidarity with, not only with Aurora, but with these 23 projects that Aurora is supporting. And that number of projects is going to grow each year as we name a new laureate. That number of projects is going to grow. So the idea is both financial contribution and as a way to keep these projects sustainable. So get involved, you know, get involved with this. Keep going. Help these people out to get a foot up. But also by giving something financially, also you can learn a bit about these projects. Who are you supporting? What are they doing? All this stuff's on the Aurora website. So you are also joining in solidarity. Yeah, I'm supporting Aurora, and we're helping with this school in Bolivia, or we're helping with this HIV clinic in Malawi. You know, people you have no maybe connection with. By joining this, you can also feel some kind of connection with people across the world, and anybody can do this. I mean, $1 a month. I mean, a school child can do it. I mean, anybody can get involved.
Thank you for all the details, but I also would, if you don't mind, I would add that along with all the things that you mentioned, you would have that inner nice, sweet feeling of satisfaction and gratitude and being able to do something for someone you might even not know.
Right.
Now, of course, $1, if there's 1 million people, that makes $1 million a month.
Right.
And according to the numbers that I just heard, if you had $1 million a month, you can support all these 23 projects, because you're talking about $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to survive that project and make it whatever the fruit is, but make it bear fruit. Right. And then I'll take this opportunity, if you don't mind, Dr. Catena, and I'll read these couple of words of the Aurora challenge, Ararat challenge, and it says, the Ararat challenge is a global crowdfunding campaign launched by the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative aimed at supporting and giving a second chance to those affected by genocides, wars, and violence around the globe. Here is how you can join the campaign. Donate any sum, even $1 a month at auroraprize.com/donate now. Dr. Catena, we have a little segment we can watch, and then we'll come back and wrap it up with your permission.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Let's see the segment. Tiden Kolovaga.
Hi, my name is Dr. Tom Catena. I'm a medical doctor here in the mountains of Sudan. Here's my little pictograph of Mount Ararat. I think we're all familiar with the story of Noah's Ark and Mount Ararat, where God wiped out the world due to its extreme wickedness and left the only righteous man, the only righteous family left, which was Noah's family, allowed them to survive and repopulate the earth. It sounds like sometimes we're at that point again today, where the world is rife with unrighteousness, with hatred between brothers and between sisters, lack of human rights in nations, many things which seem to just have gone wrong. And I joined the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative to, in some very small way, act as a counterweight against these negative influences. I would ask you to join me and to join the team at Aurora in our Ararat Challenge by contributing as little as $1 a month to the cause. And hopefully together we can somehow fight this tide of evil that seems to be encroaching upon us. Thank you very much.
Անաստանվորությունը, որում գտիդեիք, այստեղ է մեզի հետ, դաղավարի մեջ, միասին ենք, և խոսքը վերապերի գլխավորապես այդ մարտասիրական, ընդհանրապես առհասարակ մարտասիրական այդ օժանդակությանց, որոնք գրնան ամբողջ կյանք մփոխել, գրնան երկրակունթը ավելի քեղեցիկ և ավելի քաղցր և ավելի դանելի, եթե գուզեք մոլորակ դարձնել, այնտեղ ուր մենք գաբրինք կոնե առայժմ։ Եվ գլխավորապես խոսքը վերապերեր ուրեմն այսպես Ararat մարտահրավերին Ararat Challenge։ $1 ամսական և գրնակ դուք մեծ տարբերություններ բերել աշխարհի երեսին։ With us tonight was Dr. Tom Catena, great man and great purpose. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to find words, but after all, I'm coming back to thank you. Yeah. I congratulate and I wish you all the best. And thank you for being here also tonight.
It's my pleasure.
It was a pleasure to all of us. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Իսկ ցեզ հարկելի հայրենագիտներ ինչպես միշտ, բարին ընձեզ։